Hi everyone, Brightbone here, back with the third in our series of Adversaries Are Doing Stranger Things. In this video, we're going to be looking at two areas, the final two, lateral movement and actions on objectives. Our target is going to be Win2016FS. This Win2016FS is a server, most likely a file server. We know it's a server from here. And we want to target this guy. And we want to target it with the account that we stole in our previous video, our tenable service account. As we're assuming this is the vulnerability scanner, it was running in the same subnet. So odds are if we do some pass the hash, we can get access to this thing. Well, my only access to this network is Atera as it stands right now. So I need to improve that access to make sure that I can pass SMB to that file share, right? I want to use SMB. So how can we do this? We can use Microsoft Devtunnels, and that's how we're going to start this. We're going to do Devtunnel, and we're going to do some crazy tunneling to use our Windows host as a proxy to send traffic to the file server, right? I'm only going to use built-in functionality here. I am not going to add any programs. Just going to use built-in functionality with Devtunnels. Okay. All right. Well, let's jump in. So we will start with our host to Win10, which is our compromised host, and we're going to get a PowerShell command prompt to start, and then we're going to download Microsoft Devtunnel. Right. So this may take a second. I'm going to go ahead and do the invoke web request for this, but let me go into CD. Windows temp. First, let me make sure, if I could type right, C Windows temp. And then we'll do dir here. And we'll see I don't have Devtunnel in here. I cleared it out from earlier. So let me clear this one more time. And then we're going to do our invoke web request to download Microsoft Devtunnel. And this is simply just going and getting the Devtunnel executable. Signed Microsoft application. Remember, made for developers. If you want more information about some of these things, check out my SANS webcast I did about this. But Devtunnel absolutely is one that can be used to tunnel things through your fancy next generation firewall. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to pass SMB through a tunnel that we create through our host into our file server and attack it to then be able to install our software, which is Atera. Now this invoke web request takes a minute because Devtunnel is a fairly large application, so just bear with me here. And there we go. If I do a dir now, I have devtunnel.exe. And you can see fairly large, not huge, but fairly large. So to make our Devtunnel work the way that we want it to work, we have to do some things. One thing we want to find out is forwarding enabled? Odds are it's off by default, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this in. This is get net IP interface, and I'm just selecting a few things from that interface. I'm selecting interface alias, address family, connection state, and forwarding. Forwarding is what we're paying attention to, and then I'm putting it in a table. So we'll put this in a table, and you can see forwarding is enabled, and it's only enabled because I enabled it when I was doing testing of this. Normally, this would look like it would be disabled. So if I do set net IP interface, and then you just simply do forwarding, and then you do disabled, and then I run it again, you can see this is what it will look like by default most of the time. It'll say disabled. Well, we need this to be enabled. So we're going to do enabled. And then we'll check just to verify that it's enabled. And it is enabled. And notice it's all the interfaces, IPv4 and IPv6. So that's step one. Forwarding must be enabled. Step two, we need to add a port proxy. Many of you probably didn't know that Windows could do port proxying by default. It absolutely can. You can set up any port you want to forward to any server or system that it can reach. It's basically router functionality. So if we do net sh interface port proxy show, we can show the tunnels. I already have one created. It's on port 3000, going to the IP address of our file server on port 445. Now, if you want to create one of these, you would simply put this command in. Nope, did not copy. Bear with me here. And it's netsh interface port proxy add v4 to v4. Now you can go 6 to 4 here. You can do all sorts of madness. Your listing port, and this is whatever you want to set up your dev tunnel to be. This could be any port. And then this is your connecting address. Connect to the address of your target. And then this is the port of your target. So here we go. We're doing interface port proxy add. Then we're connecting to the target. And now we just finally need to show our service state for remote access, because we have to set our service for remote access to auto start and then run it. So if we do set service remote access, startup type automatic, and then set service remote access, this turns Windows into a router. And quite simply, what we're worried about is when I send to port 3000 on this host, I want it to send to the address of 192.168.136.11 or 445, which is, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page here, that is the address of our file server, 192.168.136.11. All right, so now we can set up our dev tunnel. So we've got our proxy in place. We can set up our dev tunnel. We'll open another PowerShell script. And we're now just going to run simply, we'll cd into the directory where the dev tunnel executable is, and that's cwindows temp, as we're using cwindows temp just to emulate the adversary here. And we'll do dev tunnel. Actually, because we're in PowerShell, I need to do /devtunnel.exe. And then we're going to go host. And this is the port we want to host. We want to host port 3000. Right, so host P3000. If you're interested in dev tunnels, I do have a very short video showing it in a little bit more depth and what that takes. But simply we're just hosting a port with a Microsoft Dev Tunnel. Now, this does require authentication. You have to log in, but you can use a GitLab cred or any Windows cred. Adversaries can get these too. So they can absolutely use this. So now we get our dev tunnel key right here. And we're going to take this over to Kali. So we'll go over to our Kali box and we'll start with dev tunnel. And we're going to do simply dev tunnel connect. Dev tunnel connect. Okay. So we'll do sudo dev tunnel connect. And then we're going to paste in our key. And this will connect our tunnel. I'll just do password here. Let me try it without the sudo. There we go. Now it is forwarding port 3000 across the tunnel, right? So port 3000 will be forwarded across the tunnel. Now, a lot of my tools don't support port 3000 as SMB, right? A lot of your tools don't do that. So what do? You can use your trusty Netcat or Socat. In this case, I'm going to use Socat. And I'm simply going to create a listener for 445. And then I'm going to fork that to localhost port 3000. So all of my tools running 445, if I target myself, now come across the tunnel. Right, so they go out through the tunnel, down to Windows host 2, and then over to the file server. I know, a bit confusing, but this is the easiest way to do this, in my opinion. And notice nothing has been stopped, right? EDR should be stopping this and alerting all day, and it just won't. Okay, so we have our port 3000 ready. Now we're going to use a trusted application, Crackmapexec. I haven't done many videos on Crackmapexec, but if you're a penetration tester, red teamer, you are very familiar with this. One of the first things we want to do is we want to test, can we reach through the tunnel to our file server and then just simply run a command. Now, what we have here, we have Crackmapexec, we're using SMB, we're targeting ourselves because ourselves is our port. 445 is ourself. Our user is our tenable SVC that we stole right here. Our hash is our hash that we stole right here, right? So now we just simply want to run who am I and see what happens. Does this work? Does our tunnel work? And there we go. And notice what it says, Win2016 FS. So our Devtunnel is working. This also means that this hash works on that file server, so we have accomplished our goal. And this is typically what happens when you steal the hash of a vulnerability scanner, as vulnerability scanners have to have admin access to be able to do things. So if you can get your hands on a hash for a vulnerability scanner, they're very, very privileged in most environments. Okay, so our first step, tunnel created, complete. Now, we want to infect our host with our malware that we'll call it malware, our C2 beacon, which is Atera. So much like we did in the previous videos, we're going to copy our setup across. This time we're going to do it with CME. And we're quite simply going to take our setup file from the directory that I'm in here, and I'm going to do a put file. So CME can do put file across SMB. I'm going to put this file into Windows temp setup MSI across the tunnel. So here we go. And we are copying a file. So it can take a minute to copy a file, especially across a tunnel. And there we go. It has now created C Windows temp setup.msi. Now, our final step here to get our C2 beacon is to run it. And to run this, we're going to use msiexec.exe. So msiexec.exe/I, C Windows temp setup MSI. We're going to do quiet, qn, and no restart. This is basically the same that we did in the very first video. We did that method through FOD helper, but this one we're going to use the same command. We're just running it through CME. We're calling the MSI that we just copied to the host. And here we go. This one may take a minute because we're installing software. So you can see it's now running the command, but it's just waiting. And in a minute, it will probably say command successful. When it says command successful, we should have WinServer 2016 show up in, or Win2016 FS show up in Atera. So if this takes too long, I'll pause it and come back. And nope, looks like it's going to go. Executed command. Okay, that took a minute, but it did work. So let's take a look at Atera now. We can close out our Devtunnel, and immediately we have Win2016 FS. Our lateral movement is accomplished. EDR did nothing. Why? Because it's simply we're copying a file and we're installing it. And we created a Devtunnel. Devtunnel's fully supported because why? They're used by developers. Microsoft isn't going to flag on Microsoft's own file. Probably CrowdStrike isn't either, unless it becomes something that is heavily used by adversaries. I've noticed that ngrok has started to be flagged by several as potentially unwanted programs, but Devtunnel's not so far. Okay, so we have our Win2016 FS. Now, one more thing we need to do. Remember, our target is ransoming this system. So we're going to go back to our Kali box and we're going to copy one more file over. But our file is our ransomware. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to clear this real quick. And I want to show you what our ransomware looks like. It is simply a PowerShell script. This is real. It's real ransomware. And what it has is this is a byte array for a certificate that I have access to. And I'm doing switch encrypted path, and I'm simply doing the method of protect CMS message. Protect CMS message, it just encrypts the file and adds an extension to it. And what it's going to do is it's going to add the new file path of .cms after it deletes the first file, right? Then it's going to drop a ransom note right here. As you can see, here's our ransom note, and here's our loop, and then here is our creation of our ransom note. So we're going to do that, but to do this, we have to copy our payload to the host. Or I could just simply run it from the Atera shell. But in this case, I'm going to just copy it to the host just for ease of use. And we can see that it should be copying, and we have C Windows 10 payload PS1 on there. So now if we go over to Atera and we open a PowerShell shell on our Windows 2016 FS server, we're going to cd into C Windows temp. And if we dir or ls here, we should see there's a lot of stuff on this server. And if you look close, you can see the EDR that we just beat. So I'll do dir and I'll do find string payload. And there's our payload PS1. This is our payload right here. So what we want to do is we want to run this, but I have access to this system. I want to show you what's going to happen. Over here on our HackLag member server, we have our super important file right on the desktop of this user. If this is lost, then I can open it. If this file is gone, so is our business. Yeah, I mean, just an example, but that's the idea. I could encrypt literally anything on the system with just using PowerShell. And that's what we're going to do. So this will be our final action on objective. We have our super important file. I am now just going to run payload PS1. And there we go. It is running. And now when we come back over here to our member server, we can see our super important file is no longer accessible and has a CMS extension, and we have a ransom note. This is reality. Adversaries can do what I just did on all three of these videos. We had multiple EDRs in play. We got by all of them. Just by simply using weird tools and doing things in strange ways. Yes, I know that tunneling setup was kind of madness, but if I can do it pretty easily, so can adversaries. So make sure you understand what adversaries are doing, and you should be testing these things in your environment. If you're not, you're missing the boat a little bit. That wasn't terribly hard to set up that Devtunnel and nullify your next generation firewall, right? It was not that complex. All right, so let's take a look at the detection for some of this stuff. If we do event code 4688 and devtunnel.exe, you can look and find when a devtunnel was created by your host, right? Devtunnel.exe is the name. You can see that, right? Not so hard. Now, adversaries typically won't change the name. They might, but you can also look for a few other artifacts around devtunnels. If you are worried about that, you can check out my devtunnel video. But simply in this case, we're looking for devtunnel.exe as the name. If the adversary renames that, there are some other artifacts. Also, if we do script block here, well, we'll just do event code 1. And we're going to look for some commands that were run from PowerShell. Actually, we'll do 4104. And we'll do and set net IP interface. And we can see here in our script block, we have set net IP interface from when I was running. Well, maybe not. Did it just grab this set? Let me put this in quotes. It might be a bit too wide. Here we go. Set net IP interface forwarding enabled. That's not something that people do that often. So you should be looking for this. But our major issue was not just our forwarding, but our netsh commands. If you do and netsh, admins don't use netsh. They just don't, right? If you were looking for an adversary doing something funky on a Windows host to tunnel, you'll probably see netsh here. Let me see if I can find the usage of this in 4688. Looks like it did not log. Let's see if it logged in 4104 because I was in the console. There we go. So on 4104, we have it because I was in the PowerShell console. It logged it there instead of logging it on the regular command line. You can run this on the regular command line too, but right here, this is what we would be looking for. netsh interface port proxy add. No one does this. This is definitely a bad guy. I mean, I've never seen an admin do this before. So there's your detection for your proxy, your detection for the Devtunnel establishment. The rest of this was done on a Linux box, right? So you can't really do much there. You could look for the installation of Atera on the file server. That would be what I would recommend doing. If we look, I don't think I have logs from that file server coming in, but if you look for 7045, yeah, I don't have it coming in. 7045 is the service installation. You could look for the service installation happening of Atera, and that will tell you that you have seen Atera installed on your system. Also, the execution of the setup.msi, we would have that as well. But that's your detection. All right. Thanks, everyone. This is the third one in our series. This will tie this one off for a little while. Probably go back to my normal monthly cadence on videos unless something amazing comes out. But catch me at Sans Big Easy or upcoming Sec 599. And that's it. Hack the planet to defend better.